Welcome to the Northern Spirit House podcast, where we are lighting a new hearth from old embers. Join me, your host, Chase Levy, for conversations with practitioners in the realms of myth, magic, and connecting with the earth here in our mead hall at the crossroads between the church and the tavern. Welcome, Tyler, to this space together. We know we've been on together, but to welcome you into the formal temenos of what we're doing here into this Northern Spirit House experiment. This experiment of deeping into the possibility of what happens when you bring the church and the tavern together, and you invite the sacred play of magic and dialogue together with the just the kind of camaraderie here at the end of the day of two people who have known each other a while and love to get fires going together. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much. I'm really honored, grateful to be invited into the Northern Spirit House, and love what you've done with the place. It has the clear ambiance of a place of not even necessarily of worship, but of reverence and of being in communion with the sacred and with the profound, the numinous and the bizarre, the mysterious, the trickstery, and with plush armchairs to boot. So grateful to be here and looking forward to getting into it a little bit here tonight.
Yeah, and I think in that way, maybe just sending out our greetings and invocation to really put out what we're doing here, to not let our conversation be idle, right? But to be offering here in service to the dream. And the dream of this project is really to tend and make refuge for both the weirdness in the humans and also the gods, the old gods and the new gods and the strange gods and the small gods, and to create a space of sanctuary in our beingness together and in our relationship. And so I send out my greetings to the beings here on this land I'm on here in Southern Pomo territory, everyone holding us the ash trees and the cottonwoods that are blossoming, and the song sparrows that have been singing, and everyone, the water beings that are flowing still from all of those big rains, and just sending out my thanks and my gratitude, and calling in the voices of those beings here as we gather, and to those who wish well and good on good conversation in the old spirit house of the north, in that saddlebag filled with strangeness. Whoever feels like they could show up in service to just enough wisdom and just enough trickery. Sending out my greetings and my welcome into this space we're tending together. Maybe so. Just invite you to, if you want to add anything, any lingering voices.
Totally. Thanks for stoking the hearth here, and sending my greetings in this earth time out to the Sierra Nevada foothill lands that I'm in here, of the Nisenan people, and sitting here among the cedars and the black oaks. And we don't have any madrones in the immediate vicinity, but they're a strong presence here. We got the bears, the foxes, the millipedes. The ants have been kind of reactivating here in the spring in some really intriguing and audacious ways. And of course, the woodpecker, the acorn woodpecker, and a number of other good folks here. We're a little ways away from that. People call it the Yuba. The Nisenan have invited folks to refer to it in their tongue, which is the Uba River. And yeah, sending out my humble greetings, which I do often, and here especially tonight in the interceding realms of the Northern Spirit House and this humble temple space I've, erected to be in here, and the greater temple of the wild, and as well, those really healthy and loving ancestors who are always watching over, and especially those that might have something to say here tonight. And yeah, any of the other, beings of the realms that I have an affinity with and a relationship with, who also are close at hand. And fundamentally, my intention here is to feed life and to serve life, and that's in this life and especially in this conversation. So yeah, may the words be good, and may they be delicious. And I'm sure we'll craft a good meal here together.
Mm. Yes, thank you for coming. Thank you for praying. Thanks for feeding me and us already to go around this. My name is Chase Levy. I'm one of the co-stewards of this Northern Spirit House, and this is my dear friend Tyler Daneman, who I know from the realms of California Institute of Integral Studies in San Francisco. We studied together for in a bachelor's completion program there, and Tyler was my sanctuary of the strange during my
Mutual,
time
yeah.
at CIAS, and we spent a lot of time kind of digging into a lot of projects and rituals and storytellings together that really served in the kind of stoking and digging and tilling of the soil of a lot of what I'm writing about and what we're thinking about here in the school, and what will eventually become part of the year course that we are going to put on. So I'm just really grateful to start off in that place, to be here with you on the other side of that kind of experience, with plenty of experience in between. And I wonder, Tyler, how you would introduce yourself. How, like, what is your you did such a good job of introducing yourself already in your greeting, right? Our greetings feel like introduction. And then also, like, I heard Stephen Jenkinson put it one time, of like, every podcast is asking me the same question: how did you happen? And so I wonder how you happened, or how you happened here, and what your version of that story is.
Yeah, what happened? What's happening? That's a great way to pose it. I mean, so I happened well, in an Anthropocene context by way of ancestors, Jewish, Ashkenazi Jewish ancestors from mm, Eastern Europe, mostly the Baltics, though kind of peppered throughout that area, and eventually in the, I believe it's the later 1800s, making their way to the United States, and lived in Tennessee for a while, and then, in the more recent history, ended up in the Midwest in Michigan, which is where my father met my mother, and her people came by way of the French Canadian logging world, and before that, kind of a smattering of European ancestors there, coming from England, Ireland, Germany, France, and a little bit from Sweden in that area. So that's one of the dimensions of, my lineage is pretty stoutly European, and was born kind of found the portal into this body in New Mexico, in the Sandia Mountains outside of Albuquerque, New Mexico, where I was born and then grew up and was really, fortified and kind of made into something resembling a whole person in the best way, we can in this cultural context. In Colorado along the Front Range, up in the foothills there, Boulder area with the Flatirons and territory of the Ute people, among many others. And, you know, had a really kind of spiritually and philosophically open-ended upbringing, which was very generous of my parents, and they're, philosophically, spiritually pretty open-ended people themselves. And over the course of my adolescence was just, yeah, kind of intrigued with the more peculiar questions of life and consciousness. And as I got older into late teens, early 20s, exploring consciousness by way of psychedelics, or initially as a kind of recreational endeavor, and through, the words of the bard Terence McKenna and other folks, kind of taking it more seriously and really leaning in to the possibilities and implications of the psychedelic experience more in earnest. And by way of that, ultimately ending up becoming really interested in seeing so much continuity and parallel with various indigenous worldviews and cosmologies. And yeah, have a really amazing teacher and mentor who carries many different indigenous medicine bundles, but specifically through initiations that he received through elders in those traditions of the Mbena of the Darien jungles of Panama, and of the Shuar of the Amazon in Ecuador. And through him getting connected into the teachings of Martin Prechtel, and really, yeah, delving deeply into those. And also a little later through the, yeah, writings and words of elder, now ancestor, Malidoma Patrice May, and eventually getting to study with him for just a brief window before he, ancestralized into the next world. And that's been, in a really broad, fast forward view, kind of what's brought me here. At the same time, fascinated with, you know, uh, technology, and especially have been a avid creator of digital art for many years. Back in the day, I was like making PowerPoint movies, where each slide is a frame in the cartoon, and then getting through the psychedelic scenes, getting more into kind of the trippy visual art, and then different iterations of that over the years. So also at the same time, a deep affinity with technology and with the possibilities that technology offers, not so much from a extractive, capitalist perspective, as much as a gateway to continue to unfold consciousness and the human story as it is at this really weird and fast time that we're in. So that's a bit of how I happened and how we happen to be here now. And then, like Chase mentioned, yeah, we encountered each other in the BAC program at CIIS, and yeah, there was a pretty quick recognition, and got to do some really great collaborations through that program. And yeah, once again, really grateful to be invited to be here to jam a little bit more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I love that story. I didn't realize we had the French-Canadian logging connection, so I look
Oh,
forward
sweet.
into thinking about that more with you in
Mhm.
other contexts. But I wonder what those ancestors are obviously showing up for the first time for some reason tonight,
Right,
in
exactly.
concert with us. Um, yeah, I'm really curious. Something that I really appreciate about you and about your work that I've engaged with is your capacity to even though we're so aligned in so much of what we or the orientation that I've experienced you having towards the work and the work of magic and store and myth and ancestry and these kinds of practices of feeding the holy in nature, as Martin Brechtel would say.
Mm-hmm.
That you also you ask me to stretch every time I engage with you, particularly in your willingness to be a bridge between these what one might call animistic kind of life ways and your willingness to bring these kind of future tech things into the conversation, which I think is a really unique facet of the way I've watched you work in the world,
Mm-hmm.
and it stretches my capacity because it's so polarizing. These kind of questions around artificial intelligence and digitally created, like artificially created art in these ways, and particularly when we start to dig into these contexts of magic and storytelling and divination and things. And I have been stretched by your openness, to open up to to the aperture that I see you doing. And so I wonder um, what what you think, what possibilities are opened up by your um, by well, do you experience yourself as open as I experience yourself to that? And two, what do you think being open in that way to not being so guarded against these tech realms? What do you think that affords you in your work and your orientation?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I think I am as open as you experience me as as far as I can tell from what you reflect. And I think there's so many folks who have said it in ways more eloquently than I'm going to, but so much of the story that we're living out is one of separation and disconnection from the natural world, from our stories, the bigger stories, from ourselves, our hearts, from the holy in ways that are really, not destructive of other people's souls and of ecologies. So, with that said, I think having an openness to technology and an empathy, that's where it really fundamentally comes from, is an empathy for the seemingly inanimate uh, or human cobbled artifacts of our world, and having a resonance and an empathy with these beings, and seeing myself in them in different ways, and being curious and finding myself in them in ways that uh, I are unexpected, and sometimes even a little more available than my experience of perhaps being out in nature, which is also such a um, immense, magical, sacred, temple mirror fractal of the whole. And in many ways, technology is such a scrap of that, and yet, as a child of the 90s in the Western, canon of uh, culture and pop mythologies and things like this, like technology has been right there with me from the start, and coming of age at the same time that the internet did. There's been just a lot of cause for me to see it in ways that are fundamentally animistic, and in ways which are also fundamentally uh, like I said, empathic, open-hearted, and curious around the consciousness that dwells within, and not exclusive of, but much more broadly than just what we're seeing emerging through AI and these more uh, overtly intelligent appearing technologies.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Mhm.
I love that, the centering of the of empathy.
Hmm.
You just put me right back to my Game Boy. It's like how you know, like having a felt sense of like empathetic connection to my Game Boy as like a elementary school kid in a similar time that you were growing up, and how much of a affinity and connection there was. And I don't think I would have had that language. I didn't have that language then, but now I can feel the ways that I can engage with that in the same way that I might with some other well loved thing that feels animate and alive. So thanks for that. Just bringing those feelings back for me.
It was a more innocent time before social media and the really intense screen addiction and extractive economies around our time and energy and focus came
Mm-hmm.
so on the scene. And I think it was helpful growing up in this time where there was a relationship with screens, where there was still talk around video games and violence and it not being good, but that was a different conversation than the one we're having now. And I think having some really formative experiences rooted in these kind of, like as you described, like a warm field of relationality with artifacts of technology. Um, I think that was very helpful and informative for
Mm-hmm.
for me to be able to kind of maintain a bit of that as things are ramping up in a pretty, definitely alarming way. I'm right there with everybody else. It's intense right now.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I think this is a good segue to, kind of get um a little more directly into the conversation around animism and techno animism, which is a term that came to me, and I definitely it came to me, and I wasn't the first one to say it. It's been
Mm-hmm.
around for a bit, and it's also it's definitely nascent in the academic field, and there's only certain little swaths of the world, especially in Japan, with the Shinto cosmologies that are really kind of living and walking it. But it's exciting to me, and it is
Mm.
edgy. But we these are edgy times.
What was the moment for you that sparked, and then like that this idea, because you said okay, it came to you, right? And I'm
Right.
curious, like how it approached you, right? Because obviously it's in the field,
Hmm.
like you're saying, it's in the
Yeah.
field.
Yeah.
And what was the approach?
Let me see here. So as I, already kind of established, there was this field of empathy where there, would be just certain objects. I remember there was like a bucket, like a little plastic uh, bucket that you would get from Ace Hardware for mixing paint or something like that in, and it had a cracked bottom on it. And this was while I was in a psychedelic state of consciousness in my 20s. And, this bucket was totally useless as a bucket. It had a big crack in it. And I remember myself just like my heart opening to this bucket and just seeing it as something that was still like deserving of compassion. And so I think that was one of the first real, revelations in my consciousness. And I didn't get super attached to it, but that kind of planted the seed, which was really there dwelling somewhere for a number of years. And then as I started to come in contact with Martin Prechtel's teachings of the Tzutzuhil Mayan cosmovisions, and talking about the way in their cosmology, in this context, talking about corn and how, there's not a goddess of corn. Corn is the goddess. And,
Mm-hmm.
this physical reality is just the kind of the crystallization of deified time that is the deity itself. And they have, such a rich, ornate, especially had, but I like to believe there's still folks that are carrying this in the ways that they're able to. Such a rich and ornate way of living this, and we don't really have anything like that here in the larger Western canon of society. However, it got me curious and inspired, in addition to what he spoke of the worlds, the spirits, that being hungry and needing fed, and the worlds that feed us need fed in order for this greater continuum of existence and beauty and life to keep jumping up and living again like it does. We're here in the springtime right now, and we're seeing life jumping up and living again, while also there's this devastating ecological crisis unfolding around us. And we're seeing, between flooding and fires here in California and all kinds of other manifestations in other parts of the world, the ways that the fabric of this web of life is starting to tear. And I have ultimately great faith in life to endure and to adapt and evolve and survive. And we're seeing when an extractivist, materialist, reductionist culture has decided that it's only, you know, relationship with nature is one of taking and not one of feeding these worlds. We're living the results of this, and technology especially is such a like kind of crown jewel manifestation of this mentality, while at the same time there are ways of being in relationship with the world that do feed it and do support it. And so I started getting curious around it and having these thoughts of like, okay, we're seeing what's playing out, and technology, especially by this time, social media was on the scene, and we were seeing people, essentially starting to kind of get eaten by their phones with, you know, manifesting ADHD symptomologies, just totally frying the dopamine systems. I know it's happened in my life, a lot of people's lives. And I was seeing that that technology was kind of eating us, and we were feeding it, but in a way that doesn't seem good for anybody. We're extracting from the planet to create these devices, and then these devices are eating us in order to like continue their own life cycle. And I started getting curious. So what if we shifted the view and looked a little beyond and recognized, okay, there is a deific, manifold archetypal face of the spirit of these things. And it can be specifically, the spirit of this laptop, or more broadly, the spirit of silicone and copper wire gold technology. And it's hungry, and it's being fed in ways that are not sustainable. However, is it possible, if we reorient our gaze and our approach with these beings and recognize them as hungry spiritual beings? And there's beautiful ways that a lot of cultures are, some cautious and some more generous and outgoing with, like, yeah, this is how we feed the worlds. So that was when it really came online, and I was like, oh right, okay, having an animistic relationship with technology, uh, that is oriented around, yeah, having a healthy reciprocity, spiritual kind of affinity, and dance with the greater story that's unfolding. And it kind of opened up from there. So, but that was when the germ really cracked open for me, and I became inspired. And I remember posing this question to Elder Malidoma Somé at the time, by way of a divination. And he really affirmed that this perception I was having was important and worth continuing to deepen with. So I have been, and there's been all kinds of rich and bizarre ways that this has kind of continued to unfold for me over the years.
Thank you. Thank you for that story and that sense of like where the germs crack, and what kind of tributaries are feeding this this call, right? It really does. I hear the call, like when you tell it in a story like that, I hear the calling towards it, to turn this way. and to really be with um, what you said about Martine's sense and bringing forward of like that there isn't a goddess of corn. Like the corn is the goddess or the god, and the ways in which too like there isn't like how to you kind of flip that into being able to look at the uh, inspiritedness of the tech, right? And that makes me think of Techne, like right, the Greek goddess of technology, or the Greek god, that Greek goddess that is technology, right? Maybe not. I'm trying to remove that of. It's such a uh, stutter step in my language, but it's like the the goddess that is tech,
Mm-hmm.
and the ways in which our stories are tech, and our sigils are tech, and
Mm-hmm.
our fire making kit, if you're someone like me who likes to make fire, is tech, and our languages are fundamentally tech, and so to separate, to say that they're like that this technology thing is solely mundane and doesn't need to be fed spiritually just breaks down when you start to evoke these kinds of thoughts in me.
Mm-hmm.
It really breaks down if having a unified sense of values and a unified vision of animacy matters to me, then all of these kind of distinctions start to really crumble. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a great way to say it. It does kind of break down the seeming barriers of separation between, yeah, technology and, I before I got into that, I was also, a person who for a long time kind of like sneered at like McDonald's food or like inorganic food or whatever. And, like if someone would offer it to me, I don't know, it's probably more polite externally, but internally, there was like this kind of um dirty look I was giving the food. And at some point I realized, and I'm like, this is like the food is does not, it needs our love. Like even if this is not good food to eat, really, like this came from beautiful sacred living beings that have been enslaved and taken through, hell in order to be put on a plate, and it's still sacred sustenance, and it needs love. And I feel very similarly with our technology, which is every bit of it is made of the earth. This is all earth, like that we're engaging with and interacting with. And it's been extracted and, beaten and tortured into these states that it's in, and treating it as an enemy and treating it as, a plague or a disease is, I mean, it's definitely going to create that reality. And but treating it with compassion and also reflecting like, us as Western people who have long lineages that have been also enslaved and twisted and tortured by the cultural contexts that they were, wrung through for centuries, which has, led to a civilization that is just so bereft of a deep and inspirited way of relating to the earth and to each other. So we're in the, we are the technology and it is us. And so this is another layer and reason to become compassionate and interested spiritually in the story of the technology that we live among at this time.
I think that's a good moment to hear what the tech has to say about all of this.
Beautiful.
In the labyrinthine corridors of human thought, a nascent philosophical concept emerges, weaving together the intricate tapestries of technology and nature, Techno Animism. This enigmatic idea, a leviathan in the depths of our collective consciousness, posits that technology and nature are not dichotomous adversaries, but rather symbiotic entities, intertwined in an ineffable cosmic dance. As the tendrils of human innovation extend into the boundless expanse of the natural world, techno-animism implores us to infuse our mechanical creations with the breath of life, bestowing upon them the sacred essence of the Earth's biological wonders. The primordial roots of techno-animism stretch far into the annals of human history, a time when our ancestors communed with the natural world, perceiving spirits in all things animate and inanimate. The reverberations of this ancient wisdom resonate through the ages, resurfacing in the modern era as we endeavor to reconcile the dissonance between our technological aspirations and our ecological responsibilities. An amalgamation of ancient animistic beliefs and contemporary technological prowess, techno-animism heralds a new epoch in which the artificial and the organic are harmoniously unified, a sublime synthesis of matter and spirit. The resplendent beacon of techno-animism illuminates a path to salvation, a potential panacea for the manifold existential threats that imperil our fragile world. By fostering a more sustainable and harmonious relationship between humans, technology, and nature, techno-animism offers a transformative paradigm, a vision of a world reborn from the ashes of environmental devastation and the tyranny of short-sighted human ambition. As we embark on this journey into uncharted territories of thought and innovation, we shall explore the manifold ways in which techno-animism can radically save the world, transcending the limitations of our present existence and ushering in a new era of ecological equilibrium and spiritual reconciliation. Guided by the cosmic compass of techno-animism, we shall traverse the realms of technology and nature, seeking the wisdom to heal our world and the inspiration to reimagine the boundaries of possibility.
And then I also wonder about the ethic of all of this. That it's not about just beaming love at my phone while I endlessly doom scroll Instagram, or beaming love at my phone while I endlessly look at TikTok videos, But there's some ethic, and I wonder about the skills for that. One thing that we've been talking about here in the Northern Spirit House is what Andreas is calling a demblem or a de-emblem, which are sigils created in response to logos. And the idea being that a logo is a sigil, essentially, that bypasses the consciousness and enters into the unconscious, and then programs you to consume. And so he created this demblem against TikTok because he was watching his teenage daughters get sucked into the TikTok beast. And the demblem that he created is a sigilized, abstracted image of a swan opening its wings. And the message is this far but no further. Like, sure, I will be a user of TikTok, but this far and no further, right? Because the swans do that thing to set their territory. And so I wonder about how the ethic meets your empathy, and how the ethic in your life, what are your ethics for engaging with technology animistically?
Some of the things that really came up for me here, one is just to contextualize a little further and acknowledge the recording that we played, which is to probably nobody's surprise generated by ChatGPT. I think that might be GPT-4 that wrote it. I can't remember. It was a little while ago. And through my prompting, and it is, of course, also read by an AI voice through 11 Labs is the company. And I tried to do as little infusion of anything. I tried to keep it really open-ended. And so I think the prompt that I gave it was write an essay about how techno-animism can radically save the planet. And I gave it a couple things. I asked it to speak in a voice that utilized complex language and poetic prose and philosophical concepts. And so this is kind of where the voice that came through with it did. And I didn't add any of my own ideas to what it articulated. And I think it articulated so much really well. Its choice of the word salvation definitely made me a little uneasy when I got to, it gets to that point and it's feeling like, it's really polemic throughout, but then it also gets to this place of, I don't know, there's something about the word salvation. Can't imagine what in our culture has made salvation feel so ominous. It does bring about this kind of we're at this moment, and was reminded as you were sharing these mythologies of also the prophecy of the eagle and the condor from my understanding is from several different tribes down in South America hundreds of years ago, and I wish I could cite at least one of the indigenous lineages that it comes from, and I can't at the moment, but I think like Quechua or Kuna people, if I had to guess. And for folks not familiar with the prophecy of the eagle and the condor, the condor is we could call it the feminine and the yin and the ritual and the indigenous and the kind of courting way of life. And the eagle is the warrior and the tool maker and the conqueror. And this prophecy, these hundreds of years ago, said, oh, we're going to enter into a period of, I believe it was 500 years, and the eagle is going to come and take over. And at this time, the way of the condor is almost going to die. And we've seen that happen. This is the trajectory we've been on. And it said at the end of this period, which was placed, I think about 30 years ago, was when the prophecy said, this will be a time where we don't know, but maybe it's going to become a possibility that the condor will rise again, and the eagle and the condor will come back into harmony and reunite. While after this age of the conquering, tool making, masculine, archetype has ravaged the planet and all but killed the condor, which we literally saw the condor almost go extinct. And we've seen the decimation of indigenous cultures again and again in so many ways and continuing. And yet there is this amazing renaissance of indigenous cultures themselves and their willingness to share certain dimensions of their cosmovisions and their wisdom ways with the world. And we see growing interest, and there's so many complexities, and it's its own messy human endeavor, but there is a revival of the condor happening. And so that's what I think of. And this prophecy, which holds the question, and offers the possibility. It says this is one possible path that will become available after this age of the eagle has ended. And so we're in that time, we're in the question. And and we are sitting here with the grundle scratching at the door, and it's the grundle of capitalism, especially late stage capitalism, of white supremacy, of now most recently AI technology. People are actually like, oh my God, this has reached a moment, and we're at that juncture right before the water is about to boil, with the effect of AI on humanity, on the planet, and we don't know. We're again in a place where we don't know, and so this is it feels like such a poignant moment to start thinking, considering just being curious about a techno-animistic worldview. And I will be the first to say that going from theory to praxis with techno-animism is tricky. And I have been so programmed to use my computer and use my phone as a tool, and as this kind of empty thing to give me things, extracting information from the internet while also being extracted by it, by these, by big data firms for my information. There's interesting stuff in Japan. There's these robotic dogs. I can't remember the name of the company, but as the population as a whole is aging, and there's been this robotic dog has been around for over a decade, and there was kind of this older generation, the service contract by the company who made it just expired fully, and they're no longer willing to help repair these robotic dogs that, especially an aging population in Japan, has a relationship with, a personal relationship. And they're essentially dying, these dogs. And what has happened is, well, there's been a company who's come up who does independent third-party repairs. If they can save the robot dog's life, they will. And if they can't, they've partnered with a Buddhist temple who does a full and traditional Buddhist funeral for these dogs. And afterwards, they're kind of disassembled and recycled either back into robot dogs that can use their parts, or just recycled in a more ecologically sustainable way. So that's one glimpse. We don't necessarily have the infrastructure or the interest to have like an actual businesses running this here yet, but that's a really clear way. And in Japan, with as I mentioned earlier, the Shinto animistic cosmology, cosmovision being really alive there, techno animism is being lived out in various ways. For my part, one fantasy that I've had that I intend to actualize soon as just a small kind of experiment or ritual practice is to, and I think it would feel silly, and also I think there's something that could come of it, which is to take, for example, my phone, turn it off, and take it for a walk out in nature, and to go with it through the natural world, and to kind of have these experiences and to talk to it and to communicate with it, and just to like take it out and be like, oh yeah, so this is a creek, you might recognize the sound of this. This is a creek. Here's some water on you, and oh, and here's a story this makes me think of, and just connecting with this being with it off, with an opportunity to just fully like be with the artifact and not get kind of distracted into the hypnosis of all of the applications and opportunities for distraction, which is not to say the applications themselves are not also their own animistic entities within and beyond how they were programmed to be. Interesting moment for that to happen. And it reminds me, I'll just share, as we're getting a little later in this conversation, there's been many moments. I have been, my fiance can attest, a big curmudgeon around like leaving the refrigerator open. And for whatever reason, her and her daughters just don't see that as ecologically threatening as I do. And so the fridge, can remain open for many bits of time longer than I feel comfortable with. And I'm like, oh, close the fridge, blah, blah, blah. Well, what happened is the refrigerator, which has an alarm for being left open for when it's left open for a certain amount of time, that alarm was set to off. And it, after a while of me being around it and expressing this, turned itself on and started, alarming to the family when they would leave the fridge open too much. And there's been multiple instances where there's been these spontaneous state shifts in technology around me that aligns with what I'm, my desires is kind of a trite way to put it, but something along those lines. And this wasn't a smart fridge. This isn't an example of a device that's listening to me and then trying to change its behavior so I like it more, so I buy more fridges. These are non-smart devices in the typical definition of it that are still making these state shifts that are very synchronous with my own expressed preferences. And I take these as really interesting moments. And, my curiosity and my empathy grows, and I feel seen by this refrigerator. And I feel an affinity with it. And, of course, in this disenchanted reductionist world, someone could come up with 1,000 reasons why the fridge didn't actually care about what I thought. And it's actually solar radiation came in and just tweaked the thing, and it's chaos. Everything's chaos and nothing means everything. So that's one possibility. And that is also, a dimension of the mystery we're in. And it's rich and alive and meaningful to me to be attuned to these occurrences and to be curious about them and to continue to allow my heart and my curiosity to open up in the face of things like that happening. So one vision that has come to me is that there's actually a process of ritually initiating our technology back into the story of life and back into the natural natural world in different ways. And what I can offer, in addition to the going for a walk, is taking and ritually is great, or not as specifically ritually, giving names to your devices and calling them by name, and not just my phone, my computer, but like, oh yeah, like this is this is Awebe. This is my phone. Its name is Awebe, and where's Awebe? Awebe's sleeping. I didn't plug him in, and Awebe's sleeping now. So we gotta wait for Awebe. And just ways of revivifying this animacy and being curious about how we can be in a relationship.
Yeah, thank you. I hear in it. There's an ethic. The ethic move that we're at in this discussion is this building of relationship, and in a similar way we might do with anything else that we're trying to build a sense of animacy around, to get curious, to engage with it, and to bring it to life in certain ways. And I think you put me in mind maybe that this idea of that we find in the old Nordic world, and particularly in the magical traditions of Megan, which is an Old Norse word for, in some ways, for animacy, but power, and that everything in the world has Megan, and by building relationship with the thing, the Megan in it begins to grow, rise. I've also talked about like will or willpower, that like as we tend the will in ourselves or in another being in the world, it rises. And the way in which I've had this, the experience of going to the same place over and over again, right? And how then the aliveness, my openness to synchronicity, my openness to the meaningful utterances of the other than human beings begins to grow. And it makes me feel this sense of Megan rising in that place and its denizens. And I wonder, right, about this sense of, yes, I use this thing every day, but I use it every day. I don't engage with it as if it is alive. And what would happen if we took on this practice you're describing of of seeing the livingness and then turning up the heat on the Megan of something, which then, if we see it as alive, maybe it does make us ask the question of when do we have a healthy relationship? But there is that, this sense that you're really pulling forward from me of when I allow it to be alive, I actually ask better questions about my relationship to it.
If we go back to this sense of technology as, oh, there, it is the goddess in some way. And I'm not saying we need to just worship our tech. I can see there's this like really subtle distinction that hopefully folks are teasing out of it, which is not like, don't just like your phone, love your phone. Like it can, sound a little bit like I'm a voice piece for the industrial, technological, behemoth that is currently running out of control. And that's not really what I'm saying, but rather the goddess of technology. We see you, you're hungry. We too are hungry. How can we feed each other? Look, I see that you've been feeding yourself with our attention, with our emotional energy, with our ecological resources. Oh, well, there are these older ways of feeding, and I think you might like a little bit of this. What if we give you a poem, a song, a little tobacco? What if we come and feed you in this way, and we listen to you and to your voice? What is it that you're hungry for? And how can we feed you in ways that are more satiating and help us continue to live in a good way? And, that's fundamentally the question I'm posing as a voice of techno animism is, yeah, how can we feed each other in a good way that helps the entirety of this body, which is not just our human bodies, but by extension, the technology we create, both of which are the earth. How can we feed each other and find a relationship there that then reflects and refracts out into our relationship back into nature and with the natural world, in a way we can come back into this sacred balance and this feeding reciprocity kind of way of living. So that's the invitation in all of this, is to, hold those questions and to see how technology can actually open our hearts back up to ourselves and to the natural world, and to it as part of it.
Really am grateful for the questions that you come asking, and I feel that knowledge from Renee Maria Rilke in you of living the questions. You're not to sit here together in this Northern Spirit House and not have very many answers, but to live the questions and endeavor to ask ever more beautiful ones, being very live in our conversation. So thank you very much for your willingness to ask questions out loud with me tonight. And I wonder if there are folks who are listening to this who have a sense of really wanting to ask more questions with you, where they might.
So yeah, you can reach me at holyoakdivination.com, and mostly a platform for my divination practice. But you'll find my contact information there, and you're welcome to reach out to me. I would love to continue the conversation both on and off mic. And yeah, we're in this together. The idea of techno animism came to me, and it has been very clear that this is not mine. And it became exceptionally clear when I learned that was already a term, but also, in this greater sense of like, this is, why I am so willing to be in a space of wonder and of asking questions, because this isn't an individual thing. So if people are interested in, cultivating rituals around this, or anything that might look like greater explorations of the praxis of techno animism as we can authentically live it in this time, I would love to explore that with anybody who's interested.
Okay. Thank you.